Ephesians chapter 6. We're hitting the last chapter of Ephesians. We've been here for, it's 36 sermons, so a while. Some of them have taken 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But anyway, this is an incredible piece of Scripture. So I want to go, and I'm already short of time, but we're probably going to go over a few minutes today. So it'll take 2 sermons to do this. We're going to talk about the parents and children first today in verses 1 through 4. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So this part of the text and the next 5 verses that we'll look at, not next week, but the week after, it's really, to me, as I've studied this for, I don't know how many times in my life but I've come to this again, and I see this as a real indictment on the modern church, the modern church, the church that we're part of. Because I think as passages like this show, early Christian communities, a word I like to use, were made up of kind of a cross-section of the society they were in. So if you went to a community and you just took out a cross-section of it, so to speak, you got a lot of different kinds of people, right? And what they did was that cross-section of people kind of gave up the traditions of their time. They said, we're going to be different. We're not going to be like the others around us, okay? So Paul came in, or John came in, and Peter came in, and their disciples came in, and they preached the gospel to a city, and a church formed in that city, and then a cross-section of that society came to the Lord, and people from outside of that church community said they're different. They look different than everyone else, okay? And so the indictment comes in, and what I'm saying is that most churches today look just like their community. And I'm always preaching that a church should be its community, but I want to differentiate what I said. In most churches today, the church operates within a certain community, and they just keep all the traditions of that community. So whatever we did before, we still do, whatever that may be. Okay? And so we have churches today, and instead of having a cross-section of a society or community, we have specific churches with specific ethnic... I always have trouble with that word. Ethnicities. Say it for me, someone. My tongue is twisted. There you go. So what? So what are you saying? We have white churches, black churches, Hispanic churches, Korean churches, Chinese churches. You just get on the internet. There is a church for every ethnic group. Okay? And then we have churches for a particular generation. You go to churches today, and there's churches that have mostly seniors. There's churches that have mostly young people, right? But not a lot where it's kind of mixed up between young people. And it's kind of cool. We go from newborn to 101 and a half right now. So that's kind of cool. But you see what I'm saying? Churches, when in Paul's day, he came in and he preached the gospel, and the church looked like the community. Babies, teenagers, parents, seniors, everything. Both Greek and Jew, so to put it. And it looked like the outside, but they lived a different kind of life. Okay? And so that's why this, another thing, one I left out is a big one, socioeconomic groups. We have poor churches and rich churches and everything in between, right? So, as long as a church is just a certain group of people, of one kind of people, it's really failing in its mission. So you see what I'm saying? Before I even get to the passage, this is something that comes out to me. As long as a church is just a group of one certain kind of people, one certain age, one certain economic level, it's really not completing its mission to go to all the people of its community. And what that boils down to, if we're going to apply these next 9 verses that we're going to try to apply these next 2 weeks, it requires a creation of a place where grace is so evident that you can't miss it, and all people come together as equals. That's what you said. I really didn't get that from these 9 verses. I hope you do when I get through, because that's what Paul's dealing with here. He's saying that a church needs to be a place where grace is so evident and everyone comes together as equals. And he's been building on this all the way back from the first verse in chapter 4. So parents and children, I'll read this to you. So let me just say this too, not to go back, but I spent about 45 minutes preparing us for these 4 verses on Wednesday night with the context. And I won't do that again now, or we'd be here all day. But one thing you need to know is, when this verse talks about parents, it doesn't mean like parents of small children, although they're included. Everyone reads this passage and thinks this is the way I'm supposed to raise my little kids. But Marion is still Tom's parent. He's 71 and she's 101, right? Has anything changed in that relationship? Right? Jose is still Junior's dad, his father. Even though Junior's been a grown man for a while and on, but Jose is still his father, okay? I'm Lottie's father. She's 13. I'm trying to go to the youngest in here. Eric is Kyle 6. How old is Kyle? 6? Okay, so we go from a 71-year-old child to a 6-year-old child in here. And we all have fathers, okay? But we tend to think of this passage of just like, the way Eric should raise Kyle. I want you to get that out of your head. The main part of what he's talking about here is more the relationship that Jose Sr. has to Jose Jr., okay? Can you get that in your head then? And any of us that have grown children, I really want this to hit deep with us. So children... So if you're someone's son or daughter, you're still a child of them, right? So some people read this passage and think, I'm beyond that, I'm 18, that's not talking to me. No, it is. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Okay? I think seniors really picked up on this already, where I'm going. Honor your father and your mother. Which, this is great because back then, this was a big thing. Honor my mother, what? She's just the servant of my dad. No. They talk about Paul in some chauvinistic ways. No, this was a big deal to honor your mother. This is the first commandment with the promise. Why? That it will go well with you. So let's go into this. And this text addresses children first, but because that's kind of the way the traditional house codes went. But ideally, parents should be addressed first because they develop long before children do, right? Hopefully. I don't know. We had James when we were 18, and I think we did a little growing up with him. But anyway, still, technically, parents develop before the child does. They should. They should. Some of you are thinking about your children. You're thinking, no, they have children, and they're still. But anyway. This text is an attempt to bring home what Paul is talking about in 4:1 through 5:21. The tolerant love, the humility, and the mutual submission that he's been trying to hammer into us in all of our relationships. And I've been trying to do the same thing for us as a church. But Paul's saying it starts where? With your family. He's saying these ethics, these morals, they start at home, in the household, right? And let me just say this. It's the first thing non-Christians want to point to with us Christians, right? They say, well, some of you Christians, you have who you are in public, and then there's a who you are in the house. It's kind of a cop-out for them, right? They're trying to say, You're different in the house than you are with your church people or up at the church. Unfortunately, that's kind of true of everybody. We're a different person in public than we are at home. It's not a biblical saying, but haven't you heard it said that we're often hardest on those we love the most? Is that not true? The more marriage counseling I do, I have no doubt sometimes that these people love their wife or their husband, but they're the hardest on them than anyone else. So kind of with that said, that happens to Christians. Sometimes that happens. The household isn't what it appears to be on the outside. But so let me just say this. Because of that, the most important witness we have. I mean, you think about that. We think sometimes, what's our most important witness? Who is our most important disciple? It's in the house. It's in the house. Let me just tell y'all right now, if Emma or Lottie were ever in trouble, they come first. They do. I'm telling you, if their salvation, I'm going to put them first. God gave them to me with the purpose that I lead them to Jesus. Okay? Oh, I'll move on for there. I don't have time to chase a trail that just came into my mind, so I won't. But that said, life is tough, right? It is. There's no doubt about it. And I'll say this, and this drives home what I'm talking about in this not thinking of it as like 25-year-old father, young child, or whatever. I have run into many older parents whose children have turned their back on Jesus. And it is killing them. It is killing them. They don't know what to do. And it is even more tragic when the reason that child has turned away from Jesus has something to do with the parent, with what goes on in the household, with what went on in the household, what still may go on in the household. So the integrity of our faith, who we are in Jesus, starts at home. Who we are at the dinner table, who we are in the living room, who we are in the backyard, that's the place where our integrity comes through first. Okay, so I just want to say that. I believe this is why, and it's just completely taken out of context. If you look in Titus and you look in Timothy at one of the qualifications of a pastor or a deacon or an elder, either one of the qualifications is what? His home life, right? How he handles his children. And I hear people say all the time, well, we need to wait till a man's 30 so we know how his children are going to turn out. I didn't know how my children were going to turn out when I was 30. I didn't know what was going to happen with their life. And this goes into the fact that in this culture, a father was a father till the day he died. He was the father of the household, of the clan, till the day he died, right? And so I think this goes into Latin culture. They still get this. Still Asian cultures too. I think we may be the only culture that doesn't get this. When we turn 18, we become the Lord of ourselves. And Dad, everything we thought Dad knew, well, it just all of a sudden got, secondary to what we think we know. But in this culture and in a lot of cultures today, it's not that way. Dad is still the elder. He's still the one we go to. Okay? But in the other way, he's still the one. Till the day he dies, he's responsible for the spiritual condition of his children and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. Okay? So you get this picture. So let's talk about parents. It's a hard job. It's a hard job. It's not like grandparenting, I'll tell you that. It's a lot harder than grandparenting. But if God grants a person the privilege, nothing in life is more important than children. As brief as verse 4 is, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. That's pretty brief. I could have just come in here for a few minutes and said, this is what we need to do. Just do this. But it's kind of a confusing verse. It's pretty brief, but there's a lot in there. There's a lot of ground that this covers. Let me just give you 10 things, and I'm not going to preach on 10 things. Let me just tell you 10 things. You hear them, you write them down. But these are things that I thought of this week when you think of parenting, okay? So, do you have a situation in your house, goes back to where you give grace? You give grace to your children. Do you love them? Do you build them up? Do you support them? Do you respect them? Most of all, do you encourage them? That was just one. Do you speak the truth with love, not just the truth that hurts? Do you speak the truth with love to them? Okay? Because there's a lot of truth that comes out in raising children. And it's hard truth sometimes, but you do it in love, right? Those of you who've raised daughters know this even more than raising sons. But us boys, we do have some emotional stuff. We just tend to take care of it on the playground, and get rid of it. But girls, do you support your daughters emotionally? There may not be a time for more need for an understanding of this. These girls need emotional support before they get to college. There wouldn't be a need for restoration ministry if we were doing this right. I'll get to that in a moment. Don't put them down. Don't demean them. This is what it means not to anger. It's not don't make them now. I mean, I say this too, knowing some of us had some harsh parents. Some of us didn't come from great situations. I've even seen people get jealous of their children. Don't get jealous of your children. Give them some freedom with the boundaries, right? Take the pressure off of them. My goodness, our kids have too much pressure. Take the pressure off of them. They're just children. And they don't have to know everything they're ever going to do by the time they're 18. There's a song that came out in 1996 before my kids graduated. It was called the Suntan song. It was wear sunscreen. But one of the lines were, you don't have to know everything by the time you're 18 or even 30. Some of the most interesting people I've ever known didn't know what they were going to do when they were 40. And I found that to be true in my life. Give your children room to change and be creative. And then, this is hard, and I've never been able to convince people not to do it. Stop living your childhood through theirs. It's their childhood. Let them live it. Okay? I wouldn't have had so many concussions if my dad would have just let me play soccer like I wanted to instead of bashing my head into football helmets. He wanted me to do what he wanted to do in football, and I remember it. My son never played football. I wanted him to play soccer, Brian. I mean, he was going to be... And he came home one day and said, Coach said I'd be a good wrestler. And I'm like, you've never done it in your life. 2-time state champion. We didn't even know what it was. Let them live out who they are. Let them figure it out and live out who they are. What does this take? It takes some time. It takes some communication skills. We have to learn to talk to our children. But we also have to learn to discipline them. There's a way to discipline them. Care for our children can't be an afterthought either. It can't be something we decide to do last. In our society, I realize both parents work a lot of the time. That is a reality. But some of our parents need to figure out how to do with less so that mom can be home with the child. I'm not being old-fashioned or chauvinistic. Or maybe dad needs to stay home. However it works out, these children need our time. Okay? But communication skills are the big one. No, I won't go there. I won't go there. And I'll just say this too before I move to the next point because I need to move on. Let me just say this because I've thought about this. The teenage years are a disaster for a lot of kids. And it's getting worse. Just keep up with it on the news and all these things going on. It doesn't have to be. The teenage years can be the best years of a child's life. But I'm telling you, it's going to depend on us to make them the best years. Let me move to the children now. So, as I said before, everyone in here who has a mother or a father, is anybody not in that? You can get a cup of coffee and go. If you don't have a mother or father, if you weren't born of a mother and father, you can get out of here right now. Okay. So a lot of people think, oh, the children, he's talking to the little kids. No, I'm talking a lot to us. Though I am talking to little kids. But let me just say this. Children are asked to do this by this. So think about what I just said about the parents. Paul is saying, children, give back to your parents what they give you. Whoa. Just think about that as a parent. The child is supposed to give back to you what you give to them. That could be a great thing, right? Or it could be a tragedy. So that's what we're being told to do as children. So, by obedience, what Paul is saying is that we give attention to our parents, that we express our gratitude to our parents, that we seek to assist our parents. I think this is still good for today, right? I think it still works in the Christian household as it did in the Christian household then. But obedience should never be some kind of blind obedience. Paul isn't saying do whatever your parents tell you to do. Because I know a lot of people who've grown up in families where the last thing they should have done is what their parents told them to do. Would not have worked out well for them. This is a situation where they may not have had Christian parents. But so it's not a blind obedience. But this is the ideal situation. And what is being assumed here for us as children is that this request is legitimate. Paul is telling us, give back to our parents what they have done and given to us. But sometimes parents are insensitive. Sometimes they're misguided. And sometimes they ask children to do things they shouldn't do. So in those points, then we shouldn't do it. The most difficult situation for a Christian involves parents who are anti-Christian. And I grew up with friends like this, where they were shamed for going to church. They were shamed for being Christian. Everything mistake they made, it was thrown in their face. Oh, so you're a Christian, but you do this. But I've seen that in Christian households too. Oh, you're supposed to be a Christian, but look at you, look what you're doing. So that makes it hard. But even in extreme cases, children are still to love and to respect their parents. Aren't we supposed to do that with each other too, though? It's kind of like earlier when I said God didn't say you have to like everyone, but he said you have to love them. So let me move on, and I'll finish up. Because this isn't just for small children or adolescents. That's where most people go here. In the ancient world, as I said, the obligation of the child extended to the father's death, to the parent's death. This was mainly the father. And we won't always be able to show appreciation the same way. I'm finding that at least in the time we're in, the parents are better off than the children. And the grandparents are always much better off than the children and the grandchildren. It's kind of reversed, right? But you have to remember, in this ancient society, when the oldest son got to the age where he was ready to take over the business, the farm, the father gave it to him. And then the son took care of the father for the rest of his life. Okay? We don't see much of that anymore. I need to get finished, but did you know, I just learned this about 6 months ago, something like 74% of the wealth of the United States is in the people who are between the age of 68 and 84. Do we have anybody those ages in here? Between I know we do, between 68 and 84? I need to know who you are. Do we have anybody in there? I want to become your best friend. I want to get to know you better. But I'll tell you why. You may not want to care, and I need to go. But it's because you guys retired before the stock market, before the housing market crashed. You got your money out primarily from everything that lost money before everyone younger than you lost your money. So anyway, but in that sense, and what I'm thinking of, that the grandparents, the people who move on to be grandparents, usually the oldest son is taking care of the family. Okay? So this is where a lot of this comes from. So even totally independent children, though, and we have a lot of those. I know a lot of people who are totally independent of their family and their parents. They've done well for themselves. They have their own companies. They're doing well. But they need to realize they still have something to learn from their parents. Till our parents die, there's still something God is teaching us from our parents. So, I tell you what, I know there's some strange situations with parents, and some of it just isn't going to work out because it's so messed up. But really, God created us where we're really only whole. We're only a whole person when we're whole with our family, with our children and our parents. That's why this message is here. Circumstances sometimes are bad, though. But in our day, I think, and I'll finish on this, though I have more to say. In our day, I think the crying need to honor this. So honor your father and mother. I think the crying need that's going to come is because we have so many fathers and mothers that are going to live so long, to be 70, 80, 90, 100 years old. It's changing our society. The way we're going to honor them, I believe, is to care for them in this time. I've watched in so many situations where I've seen an elderly grandparent or great-grandparent just kind of be hidden. Let's stick her somewhere and let someone take care of her. That's not what this is talking about. This honor is taking care of her or him as long as they're with us and realizing they still have something to contribute. I think this is going to be the challenge of our day, is honoring that parent into their 80s and 90s and 100s. I don't think we do it well right now. We need to get better at it. Institutions sometimes are the answer, but they're not always the best place for the people we love. So if honor involves care and attention, which I think it does, we can't forget about these older family members. And I know the seniors in the group today appreciate me saying that. So, but they didn't have me say that. Okay, so we're running out of time. We're going to take the Lord's Supper now. So just kind of a special thing as we take the Lord's Supper today that I want you to think about. And I always love it when we do the Lord's Supper, because then God always gives us something. So as you think about taking the Lord's Supper, and as you remember Jesus and what he's done for us with his body on the cross, with his blood, I want you to think about what I said today, that the most important relationships that we have in regard to our witness are our family. So think about your parents, think about your children, think about your grandchildren, wherever you are in life. And just as you go to the Lord's table today, maybe have him speak to you. Maybe about renewing that commitment to those children and grandchildren. Some of us are even getting great-grandchildren that God is putting into our lives. I'm praying that this fall, because we've talked about it, that we will have renewed efforts with our children and our children's wing this next year. I'm praying for that with all my heart. I look at, and again, I know we need to finish, but Ari and Joe are here today with Reuben, and he's not their father, but he is according to the Bible. He's the father of that family. So he's bringing them to church. Why? Because he's hoping that they will hear about Jesus and be with others and such. And we all have this in our family. We have these children that possibly their parents aren't doing what they need to be doing, but we're the spiritual fathers of these children. So we have a commitment. And then maybe some of you have children right now. Maybe you begin to think, I'm going to go and get to see my grandson for the first time in a long time next week. But I'm thinking about him. I'm thinking about all of my grandchildren and their future. Because right now, God's given me these two. This is the most important thing I have in my life to witness to. But I know they've already come to a faith in Christ. But raising them to that point where they're ready to go out. But then it's those 4 grandchildren. And the blessing of my life are that my 2 older children and their love for Jesus and the way they're raising their children. See, I think I'm not going to preach another sermon, but I want to say this. I think where we go wrong in the United States sometimes is we want to see our children go to school and get a great education and get a great job so we can talk about what they've become. Whatever that is. Graded, went to college, working for so-and-so, they make a lot of money. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But when we can say as parents and grandparents that our children and our grandchildren have come to a saving faith in Jesus Christ, we've done what God wants us to do. Okay? You're getting a glazed over look, and that's okay. Brian, won't you come and we'll take the Lord's Supper? Thank you. Everyone, we have visitors today. We welcome everyone, every believer to come and take the Lord's Supper with us, even if you're visiting.